Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Here with us, we have Chloe Smith. She is the CEO and co-founder of Mercator AI, a construction intelligence platform that delivers product insights for business development professionals across construction, real estate, and manufacturing. Before launching Mercator, Chloe developed market intelligence tools for business developers in the marketing and advertising space, where she helped reduce time spent on gaps analysis in new markets. At the core, she's an entrepreneur, biker, climber, skier, surfer, F1 fanatic, and maker of things. Hi, Chloe. Did I forget something?
No, I think you covered it all. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm to be honest, I'm a little bit jealous when I read the skier part and you being in Calgary. I bet you go to Banff a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up with something that very few people get to grow up with, which is world-class skiing in your backyard. So we took advantage of it. I think I've been skiing since I was 3 years old.
Oh man, I'm really just and also the fact that during the summer you get one of the best places for hiking as well. So it's like perfect every season in Banff.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing place to live. I mean, the Rockies have so much to offer when it comes to, I mean, we mountain bike, we hike, we rock climb, we ski in the winter. We sometimes we do winter hiking. The only thing I'm missing is surfing next to home, but you can't have everything.
Yeah, well, and if you live maybe in California, you may be able to do both. But I feel it's one of the few places in the world that you can surf or you can ski during the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a great
Yeah.
place to live. Love Canada. Love Calgary.
And now that we're speaking about a little bit more about where you live, can you tell us a little bit about little Chloe and how you started and how you got into the AC? Like I don't know how far you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, so my family's been in construction for over 40 years. My dad's been in civil engineering, and then my uncle's also been in cabinetry. And so kind of grew up around construction, and it wasn't really, I mean, engineering was always a path in my family. I have a dad who's an engineer, a mom who's a nurse, and so my dad's a little disappointed I didn't grow up to become an engineer. But it was never something that I just always thought about it as this is what my family does, and not really as an industry or something in particular that's new or a place for me to kind of make my own. And it's funny because I look back at it now and I'm thinking to myself like, well, why not? Right? There's so many people that aren't going into construction these days. We're having labor shortages, and yet it's the foundation and backbone our um, of our economies, of our infrastructures, of where we live as people, where we get to have our lives. And I didn't realize it until I really got into building Mercator and hearing the stories of the folks around me, in industry, how much uh, the pride and joy of what you build is part of the fabric of this industry. I always thought it was just something that my dad would do when we would be driving. He'd be like, I built that building, I built that building, I built that building. But it's something that every single person does. And it's because it's such a tangible, you know, physical piece of infrastructure that everyone sees and people use and people live their lives in and go to work in, right? And interact with on a regular basis. And it's really something that I've started to romanticize and get really inspired by, and one of the reasons why I absolutely love this industry, and I would be hard pressed to leave it, for sure.
Yeah, I do feel the same that you were feeling. My grandpa and my mom, they were both on construction as well. And I remember my grandpa saying like, oh, I built that tunnel and that building. And for me, it was like, okay, grandpa, just take us to the park. We don't care. That's what all people say. And when I became an architect, like I think the first really small house that I built, I was like, oh, I did that, and I was so proud. It was like I was so stupid just to ignore my grandpa. It's just such a good feeling because it's something that is going to stay there maybe forever, for your whole life at least. So it's really cool. But and I think that one thing is being part of the AC, but another is starting your own company. How did you decided to start your own company, which is something hard to do sometimes?
Yeah, and I would say like not everyone has it in them, frankly. And it's a bit of a tick a little bit. I've always been entrepreneurial. I use actually someone recently told me it's really hard to say that tell someone that they're good at that, like they should be in sales, they should go into sales, because we see that as a negative, right? It's not always paid as or it's not always received as a compliment. And it was something that was always on my mind, was economics. How do people make money? How does money get exchanged? What do people buy things for? What are their motivations? And that really, I didn't realize it, that there was something that was of interest to me, that it was something that kind of drove me into entrepreneurship at a young age. But it was always there for me. And so, um, for example, I, paid my way through university. You guys in the States would call that maybe college, or maybe it's university, but in Canada it'd be university, by starting a residential cleaning company. There I am back in construction, right? Cleaning for new builds. Also, cleaning people's homes. I started a jewelry company, and I sold jewelry. I, at a very young age, wanted to sell face products to my girlfriends. And so I would, um, find ways to sell stuff out of my locker. And it was always just something that I was interested in. I was interested in creating products and things that people were that found useful, and that added value, and then being able to own my own destiny through that. And I didn't recognize that it was something that was kind of intrinsic in my family until I realized that, my grandparents both, on both sides, created their own businesses in insurance. My uncle ran a very successful cabinetry company here locally, and it's just kind of always been something that I've been around. And when it was time to take the jump, it was a lot less scary. Like the jump into Mercator was a lot less scary than I expected, because I'd been spending all of my youth and then into my career always wanting to be on the cutting edge of building new things. And so it was, I looked at it as the ultimate investment in myself. And it was, if I'm going to start a company and build my own company around this, it's really to see how far can I take my brain, how far can I take my skills, how far can I push myself. And as someone who had previously, I came out of university, or I came out of high school actually, and wanted to do really hard labor. I went tree planted for a season, and it was really just to see how far I could push my physical skills. And so this jump into entrepreneurship and starting Mercator was really about this push towards how do I test my mental skills and my, my business acumen that I've been developing over so many years.
Is It's incredible how many things you have done. It's clear that it's part of your DNA, being an entrepreneur and creating your own business, and I love it. I love it, and how also the analogy and on how you wanna challenge yourself in like when you do running or surfing or whatever, and you say I want to uh, go higher or want to go faster, and I feel having a company is pretty much the same thing. But I also do love how you started when you said it's not for everybody, and 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 I do feel that that's kind of a mistake that like we were speaking about this, like social media is just pushing everybody to be an entrepreneur, to be their own boss, and like there is nothing wrong on being an employee because you can be a CEO of Google, and is that bad? Not at all. Like I may rather prefer sometimes someone who is the CEO of Google than having a small startup in terms of money, right? Or in terms of size of a company. So I don't think it's the only path, but I do feel it's something that social media is pushing people to, just be an entrepreneur. You're gonna be successful. You're gonna be happy, and you're gonna be a millionaire. I don't know
Well,
if
and
you relate with that.
I do so much. I mean, when you're younger and you start showing your creativity off, and I remember so many times people be like, "Oh, you could start a business doing that," and that is the number one thing that makes the hair stand up in the back of my neck, like the just gives me the heebie-jeebies when someone says that now, because I'm thinking like, you have no idea what it takes to start a business around that. Like, first off, is there any demand? Right? Is the cost of what you're making actually worth what you could sell it for or more? Like, what are your margins? Like, there's so many more questions wrapped up in that one statement that we just kind of gloss over. A really fantastic book that when I left my organization, the last organization prior to jumping into Mercator, and jumping into consulting while I was supporting myself through Mercator, um, uh, I had given my boss a book called, we all know it's called The Lean Startup. And primarily because there were so many aspects in that book. That book doesn't talk about necessarily starting a startup where you are yourself stepping out into the world and, you're hunting, you're eating what you kill, like you're literally feeding yourself off the revenue that you can generate. It's about having a startup mentality wherever you are, right? And one of the things that I found the most powerful about that book is the fact that you can be a startup within an organization. You can build a sandbox within any organization, which means that you don't necessarily have to take on all of the risk that comes with starting your own business and having to make sure that your house gets paid for, or your home, or wherever you're living, right? All your meals, like you're feeding yourself, you're making sure that your expenses are covered, so on and so forth, and you've got all these external pressures on you. You can do so within kind of the confines of another organization. And that truly was the original path that I was on, was to build something within an organization and have the flexibility and the creativity and the space to do and try and fail and learn, not necessarily being the one at the end of the day holding the all of the risk of whether or not I can still pay my bills at the end of the day. So it definitely, I think it's not for everyone, and I think that's a good thing. And I think we glamorize it definitely in pop culture around being a startup, and we talked about it earlier, like 2 years to being a billionaire. That's a joke. That's the exception, not the rule. And the rule is, you're putting in 10 to 15 years into this, and it's going to be a slog, and it's going to be a grind. It's going to be hard, but you're going to learn a lot from it. And you have to, a lot of times it's just stamina. It's a stamina game. How long can you survive? How long can you build this thing and keep learning? And I think that can be really challenging for folks, especially with our attention span.
No, I no, absolutely, and I do love what you were saying about being an entrepreneur within a company. Is like if you're not adding a lot of value working on a company where you don't have pressure, where you don't have risks, how do you imagine you're going to add value when you have pressure and risks? And like there is no way. Like, and I feel that's a really good test to basically know if someone is made to be an entrepreneur or not. Like, are you adding a lot of value or not? If you're not, like, then being an entrepreneur is not for you, because it's about adding value, and like you said, having stamina and pushing, and like you said, it's at least 10, 15 years, and the odds are that most likely you're gonna go bankrupt. Like that's those are the numbers in the industry. We can discuss about that, sure. Like I most of the people who go bankrupt is because they take too many risks, or they want to do it the easy way, and I'm sure about that. But the odds are still there that you might go bankrupt, so you have to be prepared on that. And I do love what you said about, like, this is an investment on myself, and and I do feel the same way. Like, what one of my employees, he wanted to have his own startup, right? And he came to me. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna do an MBA, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna have my own startup. And it's like, I was like, why do you just don't go and have your own startup instead of an MBA? Like, there is no comparison. What you are going to learn in
Oh,
1 year on a startup is going to be like 20 MBAs.
we,
Uh,
my husband and I often joked when I was first starting Mercator, it feels like a PhD in business. You know, there's no better education than just to literally rip the band-aid off and go at it.
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you rather hire a guy who with an MBA, or a guy who used to have a startup and was the CEO of a startup? There is, it's no brainer. You're gonna hire the guy who hired a startup, who knows about everything, who actually did the stuff, not only learned the theory. The theory, it's amazing. Like, hey,
Mhm.
just do marketing, people are gonna come to you. Just do sales, and people are gonna buy your product. Well, little far from that. um, but I am curious on how did uh, you go from the whole construction industry to a pain point that I do feel not many people are working on. So that's why I
Mm.
was really interested on having you on the podcast. How did you go with what you're doing in terms of added value on connecting companies and projects? I'm not going to spoil it more, but if you can
Yeah.
tell the audience a little bit about that, and how do you decided to work on that?
So it's interesting because I had a really fantastic kind of um, start to my career that gave me this kind of hotbed of learning across so many different industries. I think one day I counted and I had worked in about 13 different industries across about 35 different companies. Just in terms of being in the marketing and advertising space and being able to touch so many different accounts. You know, one day we would be pitching healthcare, the next day we'd be pitching consumer goods, the next day we'd be pitching automotive. And so, having had the opportunity to work with business development teams and understand kind of how quickly and rapidly they needed to understand markets, that's really where a lot of the beginnings of this thought process came to be. So, I have a really meandering background, right? I have a degree in public relations. I went into software development out of university. Then I went into marketing and sales. And then from there, I went into analytics and started building analytics departments. And through that, I started to understand how data was created and then analyzed. And then through that experience, kind of, got to dip my toes into data science and then ultimately into data strategy. And so I had the ability to take kind of the business acumen together with the data acumen and bridge those two things together. And where that came together so well was in prepping our business development teams for pitching new markets they knew nothing about. And so I had the opportunity to build products in that space where we were using data to figure out, okay, if I wanted to understand, how a market operates, well, what are all the data points that are getting generated that would help me understand, without having to talk to anyone, frankly, the shape of the market and who's winning and who's not, and who's got what customer voice and who's got what market share, and so on and so forth. And so, taking that concept, I thought, this has got to work really well in a super unsexy industry. And so we started going after, because, at the time, like, everyone was so obsessed with starting startups for themselves, right? Like, for consumer goods and selling to consumers. And I was thinking to myself, like, here's an opportunity for us to take something that could be really powerful and bring it to an industry where maybe we're a little more low tech, especially on the business development front. And so we spoke to healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, insurance. We spoke to a number of different industries before selecting construction, and it was so serendipitous. Like, just imagine going through and speaking to all of these companies and talking to huge organizations and realizing, oh my God, the problem that we need to solve for is literally in my house. Like, my husband's an engineer, my family is in engineering. Like, it just made so much sense. And so we started digging into construction, and that's because that was a lot of what we were hearing is like the industry's a black box. If the clients aren't working with you, if the spend's not happening with you, it's really difficult to understand where those next projects are. And so we started to look at, okay, well, could you map out the entire world of construction through the data that gets produced as construction projects develop over time and relationships are built and people work together. And so that was the original hypothesis. And so when we came to building Mercator, we had ended up developing a model that does that, right? It looks at, anything through land transacting all the way through to people occupying buildings. And, we'll start here looking at policy changes and things like that to really understand, what new work is coming up, what new opportunities are coming up, and how do we detect those at a stage that makes sense for the user. And I think that that's the critical part is we're not like a bidding platform in that we start at the kind of pre-construction stage and end once the project's been awarded. We see the entire life cycle of a plot of land into the built world and redevelopment and, tenant improvements and so on. So we're really able to say, like, what is the right stage for you to jump into a project and sell to your customer, and let's get you in front of them at those stages where you can build relationships and nurture relationships and add your value, by being able to have the information you need to be a value add to them at those early stages. And that's snowballed into the tool that we have today, which you can come in and immediately eliminate any ghosts that might be in your pipeline, projects that you're chasing that aren't going to materialize because you're getting real-time data on them. And then also backfill with a ton of private projects that fit your profile, that are actively in motion, that have spend. Public projects I think are well supported right now. It's easy to be able to find public projects and get involved, but it's the private ones that are really difficult. And in fast growing markets like Texas, where there is a lot of competition moving in, those are the ones you want to get in front of, because you can start building up consistency and relationships there that start to produce project on project on project and build your reputation in the private sector.
Yeah. When you're describing Mercator, it's so clear, it's such a big need in our industry, and for me, there's a contradiction between the kind of startups that are out there. So I'm just curious on that. Like, most startups just target the design phase of the construction industry. Most of them are working there, and I, I do see that, sure, like doing I don't know, modifying or improving an automation on how you design a building looks really cool and might have impact on the project. And also it might be easier, I don't know, maybe to sell to an architect or a structural engineer or whoever, but there is nothing to automate if you don't win projects. So like, and the money's there, and who cares if you can, like, yeah, for sure there are many tools that are great and you can improve the design on a 5% or 8%, or but if you don't get projects, you're not gonna improve anything. So why do you think that that's happening in our industry, that there there are so many companies targeting something that it might not be worth it if you don't win projects, and there are very few startups that are adding so much value as Mercator on that specific part of the process? You think it's for something specific, it's harder to sell, or why do you feel that's happening?
I mean, just look at the distribution, right? um Construction companies do two things. They build buildings, or they execute on work, and then they win work. How many people in an organization are dedicated to winning work versus how many people are dedicated to doing the execution? right? Um, it's not a large market. The back office team, the people who aren't in field are, a smaller group, a smaller portion of the organization, and oftentimes get overlooked. And I'd argue that, we're seeing so much tech in the field because there is a lot of people there are a lot of folks that have come from that world building tech for themselves. I think a really bizarre thing that we've happened upon as Mercator is that um, we don't come from construction. In fact, actually, we saw so many different industries starting out, and this wasn't a problem that I was personally experiencing when we went into like servicing construction specifically. It was a problem I was experiencing as a business developer in an industry that targeted so many different industries. So it almost it's almost like, if a startup could take its idea and then test it across so many different industries to make sure that, yes, this is the industry where it makes sense to apply it, you'd probably find people that are completely fish out of water, in an industry that they know nothing about, but that the solution and the solution that they're trying to propose is actually a great fit for that industry. But we don't necessarily do that, and that doesn't make the greatest of stories either. Most people come from their industry and go to solve a problem that they've experienced because there's a personal connection there. I think for us, it's been really neat to actually observe the fact that there are alternatives to Mercator, but there really isn't a direct competitor. And one of the reasons why is because, hey, look, when I was doing this in marketing and advertising, the data was created. We have to go and build the data, and that is a lot of shoveling of all kinds of crap that is very, very difficult. And we come across in market when we're selling to our customers, companies that are doing this manually today. They're dealing with city data, and they're digging into permits and applications and things like that help them understand early signals of movement. And it is a slog. It takes a person hours to do. And so, to even think, and then, not to just exacerbate the pain point, but like to try and do what you do in one region and then go and apply it to another, and hope that it's the same approach is foolish, because every single municipality deals with that data differently. And so to be able to standardize, and I think the real power of Mercator long term is that we will ultimately be the backbone, the data set that is the backbone of future construction tech companies that service the back office, because we are the ones standardizing and creating consistent, repeatable, granular data around construction and around the construction process, from conception all the way through to post construction. And so as a result, we're able to build these business development tools, these competitive intelligence tools, these insight tools on top of this data to service the industry at first. But I think that there's way more to come as we start to kind of decode our industry in terms of the data it's producing.
Oh, I bet. And let me correct you on something. You said that your story, because you don't come from the industry, is not as exciting. Well, I used to be one of those dumb guys who used to think that people who comes from the industry are the ones who are going to save it. And the more I interview people, the more I meet entrepreneurs. It's such a double-edged sword, because when you come from the industry, you're so biased and you think you know the problem, and you end up, even I have seen founders that they don't even interview clients because they think, I come from the industry, I already know the problem. And that can be a huge problem. For sure, I have seen other entrepreneurs that come from the industry and they do the work correctly, but I do think that coming from outside the industry is more of a benefit and not not something
It can
something
be.
bad. So yeah, it can be, absolutely. So just want to correct you on that,
I
because I
appreciate
I
it. I
mean,
appreciate it.
yeah, I met so many cool entrepreneurs that come from outside the industry and are doing such a great work. Um, and and I do think that there is so much to do. But what's on the roadmap for Mercator? Like, are you considering going? You mentioned that you want to start working on Texas. The idea is to go to the States, and or you want to go globally, or what's the the roadmap for Mercator in the next couple of
Yeah.
years?
Absolutely. So, I mean, right now we're focused in on Texas. So, we'll be launching Houston here shortly. So, we have Austin live today. And that's something that, if you have listeners who are interested in Mercator, can come and sign up for Austin today. We'll be launching Houston shortly. We'll also be launching San Antonio and Dallas Fort Worth. And then from there, we'll start moving into kind of the next markets that are. Um, Strong, I think, construction tech adopters like Florida and New York, and then kind of start to span um, across the US and into Canada. I would love to be able to take Mercator globally. I think there's a lot of value, especially in the UAE, for example. And I think that that'll be part and parcel of our traction and our growth here in Austin. We have massive plans for making this more than just a BD tool. But for today, definitely, I think, I mean, some of the stories just coming out of our existing customer base, the fact that they're able to eclipse some of their competitors. I actually had a customer the other day tell me that a frenemy had walked into his office and said, um, like, you barely have a BD team. How are you so prolific? Like, you're ahead of every single project I try and get. And he said, I've got a secret weapon. So it's really exciting to see what, like, the change that we're making and the impact that we're making in the BD space. And I think that will inevitably grow into our marketing teams, our C-suite teams, our estimating teams, in terms of the value that we can create with the data that we're building kind of underneath Mercator.
That's so cool. And you sound a little bit like your dad. Just, hey, I'm proud of this client making and having this big advantage compared to their competitors. And I don't know, that's such a nice feeling. I can see your face, and it's
Oh,
like
it's
you're
huge.
so proud, and it's such a nice feeling to be making that impact in your client's business. So congrats on that. And uh, regarding technology, are you also considering big changes or scope or whatever related to the product to add to your platform in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I know the industry is just dying for is the ability to have, a better sense of companies and their profiles. And that is something that we offer today in Mercator. You're able to look up any company and see what work they've got on their plate right now, trends around that company, and contact information. Um, for us, I think that that's probably going to be the place that we build out the most when it comes to trend and forecasting, aggregation of our data, so that we can understand where is the market moving and where are we going. When we back in my analyst days, we always talked about this analytics maturity curve, right? And specifically around we start with understanding what has happened, and we then move into what is happening, and then we start to get into what what is predicted to happen, and then what could happen if we take this path versus this path. And you kind of grow in terms of your analytics maturity. And I think that's really where we're headed with the product as well. Is we start with today, where we're able to send micro insights to our customers in terms of new construction opportunities, but that grows into macro insights about where their industry is moving, where their competitors are having relationships, where they're not, being able to ultimately be able to share company profiles that help to understand, how do you stack up. And a big purpose that we have as Mercator is really about elevating, building excellence through transparent knowledge for all, right? It's about, at the end of the day, we do better work, all of us, if we have more knowledge. And if Mercator can make that knowledge more transparent, then all ships rise, right? And I think that that's the ultimate goal here with what we're building, is elevating the industry and the excellence that we can deliver in the products that we deliver, through honestly having more knowledge and being more competitive and pushing one another in industry.
No, absolutely, because it's not just about helping the company win more projects, but it's also a benefit for the owners, where they now can really be transparent and have access to all the different stakeholders that might want to participate on the project and actually select the one that is the best and not just the one that they have already worked on in the past and it's the
Or
one
the
they
one that's the
know,
cheapest.
or the one that is the cheapest. Yeah, exactly. Like that's something that always seen in our industry is a lack of information where like if you go to a restaurant you have all the information there and you know if it's a good place or not, what they serve, the reviews, the price. When owners have to select subs or GCs or they don't know that. Like they might have a feedback from someone that has worked with them, but there is no information on how good they were. Or so I always thought that that's something that we're missing in our industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is ultimately the transparency that we want to bring as Mercator, and the transparency that we do bring today, which is probably one of the biggest shock value moments that we have in our demos is how do you know that? So, yeah.
Cool. All right. I don't want to take more of your time. I know you're a really busy person, Chloe. But before we wrap this up, can I ask you a couple of ping pong questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to start with an easy one. Can you name a great software in the AC?
Oh, other than us, I would say I'm a huge fan of the folks at Project Mark. I think they're doing some amazing things on the CRM front.
Could have said Mercator if you want, but it's nice that you're mentioning Tom, which
Yeah, I'll
is
always
also a
mention a
friend of
good
mine.
friend.
Yeah,
But
yeah, Tom.
Mercator.ai is our URL. There you go.
I'm going to leave you space after the ping pong questions to give information to the audience. So, which do you think is going to be the next big trend in our industry?
So I think with the rise of Gen AI, you're going to see a lot of companies wanting to build their own software because they're kind of frustrated with the fact that we have been so underserved. And I think one of the challenges you're going to run into is that you're going to have large companies building their own software using Gen AI. You're going to have smaller companies trying to, and more, we're going to have to become technology companies in order to sustain them. I have a pet theory that we might actually find ourselves in a space where more of the companies that are popping up are actually service companies that are helping the companies that have built their own personal integrate or like personal software to integrate into other software or even just to maintain it. So I to me that is actually a big concern, because I think if you go down the path of servicing yourself with a custom piece of software, you're going to end up finding yourself kind of stranded on an island where none of your systems talk together. And you're going to be turning yourself into a tech company, not a construction company.
Okay, like it. Bold statement.
Hot take.
Um, outside the AC, do you have any passions?
Oh my gosh, I think you listed them at the start of this call. As you probably noticed, I'm a little bit I guess sporadic. I have many hobbies. I think last time I counted about 16 hobbies. Yeah, I've done everything from I built most of the furniture in my home. I have used to have a huge passion for reupholstering furniture. I'm big into anything that's an adrenaline based sport. Um, I'm a maker, like you mentioned. So definitely, yeah. I don't know. I have too many hobbies to count.
Yeah, yeah, so many, but nice. Um, what's your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
Sagrada Familia. It was something that inspired me. I think I was about 14 years old when I walked through that building, and it was amazing to watch a building that was so artfully crafted and that has taken so many years to build and then ultimately restore, and just the story that that building tells.
Yeah, just going inside the building and looking to the roof is like just insane. It's a feeling that you cannot describe it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And finally, any book to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, man, I've got so many, but the one that I've been reading most recently is by Ben Horowitz. I'm looking at it on my shelf here. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And oh, that just hits you in the feels, you know? So many of the actually one of the main kind of culture pillars that we talk about in our company today comes from that book, which is people, product, and profit in that order. And how important it is to make sure that your people are supported and well supported to do the crazy things, to create the amazing value for our customers, to then ultimately generate the revenue and profit for our business so that we can keep creating an amazing place to work, but then also amazing value for our customers. So, yeah, that book has really inspired me in the last year.
Yeah, amen. I think it's a must. It's a must for every entrepreneur. Read it too.
Yep.
It's really good one. Um, and before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about Mercator and also about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, come connect with me on LinkedIn, Chloe Smith. Um, you can find us at mercator.ai. So that's mercator.ai. And if you're an AGC member, we are currently offering in the Austin area the ability to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can find early projects every single week. And so we're shooting those out through our new partnership with the AGC.
Nice, nice. Thanks so much, Chloe. This has been super fun and insightful. So, looking forward to what Mercator is going to accomplish in the future.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Okay. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.